Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all our participants. I'm Simon, the host of today's episode of AES Speaker Series. Today, we are delighted to have Angie Lau on our stage, joining us from Hong Kong. Also, a very warm welcome to you from Germany, Angie.
Thank you, danke.
Now, before I introduce Angie and our topic, allow me to briefly say a few words about AES. Founded in 2019, Asian European Society provides a platform for students and young professionals to create cross-cultural connections. Our mission is to foster intercultural respect and understanding between Asia and Europe. We started as a student society at Technical University of Munich and are now slowly growing into a global community with members in different parts of the world. In addition to our speaker series, we also organize corporate workshops and a wide range of social events. So if you think that sounds interesting, get in touch with us on aesmuc.de or follow our journey on our social media channels. Now coming back to our event, let me quickly share with you today's structure. First, I will introduce you to the topic and say a few words about our guest Angie. Then we dive deeper into her journey and motivations as a storyteller, and we then leave the stage entirely to her to give us her insights about recent blockchain trends. In the end, there will be a moderated Q&A, so I highly encourage you to submit your questions and ideas starting from now. You can do so by using the Q&A function on your screen below. So now to today's topic, storytelling and technology. Emerging technologies change our lives faster from day to day, but most of the recent trends are only understood by small expert groups. At the same time, trust in the media, our information source, is shaking. How can we navigate this world of rapid change and information? If we want to keep up with the pace, we need people like Angie Lau to translate expert knowledge in stories of technology. Stories that empower its listeners, connect people across borders, across cultures, and explain technology at the intersection of business, economy, and politics. So now more to our guest. Angie Lau is a Hong Kong-born, Canadian-raised, award-winning broadcaster and media funder of industry-respected Forecast News, known for her contributions to global conversations in finance, economics, leadership, and blockchain. She is most recognized for her role as Bloomberg's television Asia anchor of First Up with Angie Lau, where she has collected 10,000 plus interviews in her career. In 2018, she co-founded Forecast News, a digital media platform that focuses on blockchain, where she's founder and editor-in-chief. So Angie, as a journalist and broadcaster, you made it to your mission to tell the story of other people and of emerging technologies. But before we move to these issues, I'd like us to start with your story, the motivations behind your journey. Because most people, they just know you from being on stage. So we're all very interested in learning about the backstage experiences of your career. Tell us, what is it that drives you to show up on stage, to speak up and to narrate the world?
That's a great question, Simon. Thank you so much for inviting me to this group, and hello everyone. It's not often that as journalists, we're in the business of telling other people's stories. And so this is a very unique opportunity to share my personal story. So thank you for the opportunity. One of the most important things I think that drives me and motivates myself and other journalists, and certainly our audience here, is a desire to understand the world a little bit better. For me, that really motivated me to get into journalism. And it was really that curiosity of the world beyond our backyard. And so I really applaud all of you for joining an organization like this and this platform to understand that the story is bigger than just the ones in our own community. And certainly with digital connectivity, we have experienced an explosion of opportunity this generation and all the ones that precede it and that follow. And it is a different world as a result of technology. For me at Forecast, it was really also a recognition that if you cannot understand the future that is to come, you will never see your place in it. And for me, as a mother, as a new mother, I really had this thought when my little boy was born. And I was really at the cusp of something transitional, both personally, and that bled into my professional life. I felt that it was time to expand and explore what more I could do beyond a network, and really explore and follow the vision that I felt was important. For me as a journalist is not just about working for any one network. It's not about any one role. It is about the impact that we have in our society. I felt that the time was right for me. Um, People often are very surprised to hear that I founded Forecast and made the transition out of Bloomberg as a new mother. How do you start a brand new business? How do you start a startup as a founder, as a new mother? I mean, most people would think that that's operational risk. That but those are old world. That's old world thinking. That truly is old world thinking. And my story is certainly not unique, but my motivation for me is very personal. If you can't understand the future that is to come, you'll never see your place in it. And my responsibility as a journalist and as a mother was a promise to my little boy, was if I could do my part in helping explore and help people understand the future, then perhaps that they could see their place in it and that they could be empowered to participate. And for me, that is the journey that Forecast is on. I think that is a journey that we are all on, as we see how technology changes our world in microseconds. It's happening faster at a pace than anyone can keep up or understand. And yet we must, because to not keep up, it would be a detriment to all of us and our human journey together. So that's, in a nutshell, that's really the DNA behind Forecast.
Yeah, I think you being this translator of technology knowledge into a narrative format is really what we need, and it's very important. And I think now also the participants have a great overview about what you do. So the stage is yours now, and we are all very excited to hear about the recent blockchain trends in Asia.
Well, thank you. I'll probably just spend 15 minutes on this, but I'm excited to answer your questions and as we explore together. But it is really great to meet all of you. I'll just share a little presentation that I put together for this group. And let's see where we are here. Hold on. Okay. Let me try to figure this out here.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Is that everybody? Okay. So Forecast is based in Asia. We are a venture-backed startup that is focusing on blockchain and cryptocurrency coverage for the mainstream audience. And what we say is that we are bringing and connecting the blockchain community to mainstream decision makers. We are based in Asia because this is really where the innovation is being led, both from the talent side, from the innovation side, but also on the regulatory side. The liquidity is here. A lot of the political initiatives are coming out of Asia, and it is a significant part of the story. So I really applaud those of you who seek to understand this region more. It is shaping the world more than you know. And let me just show you a little bit how and why Asia matters. Asia's share of global growth over the past 10 years, and you can see it right there in black and white. The technology revenue is 52% of global growth. Startup funding, 43% of startup funding is actually landing in Asia. 51%, that is more R&D dollars are spent here in Asia than the rest of the world. And our last number is mind-blowing. 87% of patents filed here. That means the ideas are here. And it is that kind of innovation that is being supported by R&D, by startup funding, by technology revenue, that just makes this part of the world, when it comes to the technology story, extremely important. And this is why we are hyper-focused on blockchain, cryptocurrency, and digital assets. In our opinion, cryptocurrency price movements are simply the tip of the iceberg and not necessarily the main story. This is the main story. The main story is that this statistic was actually taken in 2019. 80% of global firms are undergoing digital transformation. Well, post-COVID, you can be certain 100% of global firms are now undergoing some form of digital transformation. Significant here that 61% are actively exploring blockchain. And Asia is playing a significant role here. You probably already know this, guys. Asian economies will be bigger than the world's combined this year. It probably is already surpassing it. Blockchain technology market is actually accelerating faster here than anywhere else in the world. And so when you think about Asia, not only is it the geographical epicenter of all of these tech trends, it is also a significant part of global growth in innovation trends. And I just want to share with you just a very, very quick snapshot. If you're wondering, oh, what's happening in Indonesia or Vietnam? I don't know what's happening in Korea. Well, compare and contrast it with wherever you're sitting right now, either in Europe or otherwise, and ask yourself what's happening in your country, because when you expand the borders to this continent, and we just compiled a quick little snapshot for you all. Indonesia. We've got, this just a quick example, blockchain coffee, blockchain tracked coffee to China. In Vietnam, it's starting to regulate cryptocurrencies. There's a very interesting young demographic of talent, of developers actually in Vietnam. This is a country that has always provided very high-speed access to the internet. And so this is a very digitally literate young population. And the talent pool is there. And the projects that we're starting to see coming out of Vietnam is also really interesting. Korea is one of the most engaged countries in crypto adoption when it comes to mainstream. There was a story that we did a couple of weeks ago where there were more volume of trading in cryptocurrency than the equity markets in Korea. That is how quickly the adoption and how deep the adoption has been. However, we've also reported of late that there is a real tension that is rising from a regulatory front. The current Prime Minister nominee in his testimony addressing the National Assembly before his nomination was confirmed, had to answer a ton of questions about cryptocurrency. That country is facing tax regulations. They're facing questions about regulating crypto exchanges and things like that. In the Philippines, We're seeing NFTs being applied. We also are reporting that the central bank itself is recognizing that perhaps some sort of digital assets to help 70% of its adult population that is unbanked. That is a country that is in dire need of really innovative fintech solutions that blockchain and cryptocurrency can potentially provide. Over in Thailand, we're hearing about hotel chains and tourism groups that are trying to lure tourists into Thailand by offering payment rails to crypto. In Hong Kong, the SFC, which is the regulatory body there, has created a sandbox trying to figure out what that regulatory environment is going to look like. Hong Kong has been very interesting in the crypto and blockchain space. There's a lot of teams and a lot of protocols and a lot of projects that are coming out of Hong Kong. Singapore competing with Hong Kong on the regulatory front. This story just, if this signifies something that the traditional guys, the legacy guys are arriving as well. It's no longer the cypherpunks and the young crypto converts. We're talking about Southeast Asia's oldest bank, DBS. They launched earlier this year a digital assets exchange, a crypto exchange, to bring in more institutional and traditional investors. That is also a big trend that we're seeing here in Asia, and I can share with you a little later. And then over in India, I did a recent interview with one of the top crypto exchanges, and we were talking about Dogecoin. A lot of one of the most interesting aspects of Dogecoin is, as you know, the affordability and the wealth generation and creation that it actually allows for regular people. You don't have to be a whale. You don't have to have specific access to equity markets. You don't have to have a broker. This is a new avenue of wealth generation to the 8th decimal point. And because Dogecoin is so accessible in that way, where Bitcoin at 54,000 and up is inaccessible to a lot of people, this is capturing an imagination for a lot of folks. And in India, he was telling me that 70% of that day's volume, it was one of the days that Dogecoin went crazy. 70% of the volume of trades were in Dogecoin. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. But the grand master of all is really the behemoth called China. What's really driving the momentum, obviously the market play with 1.4 billion people. India obviously has that population opportunity as well, but it doesn't have what China has, which is a very top-down directive from the very top to see blockchain as one of the main pillars of economic growth. China is investing deep into blockchain, and I'm going to share with you a little bit what we're seeing. So how is China using blockchain? We often talk about what are the real world applications, and China is thinking like that times 10. So obviously the rest of the world sees immediate use case in finance. Well, China obviously is already thinking about that for supply chain finance, to be able to authenticate contracts, also to be able to track the timeliness and financing efficiency of that finance, and be able to flow dollars in a more confident way via blockchain and potentially smart contracts in a way that, if you go up to a bank and you have to convince somebody to give you money because you're a viable business, but you just need some liquidity right now so you can pay your vendors or you can pay your staff. Supply chain finance, that kind of archaic experience that actually a lot of us still experience, really streamlined down to blockchain. Same with credit management. Cross-border payment obviously is super, super important. As you know, this is a big regional play. And there's a lot of, trade relationships and trade agreements at play, and that can be facilitated and efficiencies can be created with blockchain, obviously. In the medical field, we've been reporting of where it's as simple, and obviously with COVID, everybody is starting to get vaccinated, and yet how do you track the validity of your vaccination as you go into the next community or go into funds? This is very interesting here as it's being applied. We did see this being applied very early on in the charity space. Corruption is one of the big issues that China is clamping down on and has for the past decade. And so to be able to streamline systems and to understand that if I'm going to, if this is where I want my money to go, that it's actually going to get there and it's actually going to be used in the way that it's going to be used, in a smart chain kind of way, in a smart contract kind of way, that you cannot use that dollar unless it is being spent specifically for, X, for books for kids, for pencils for schools, for, things like that. And then of course, lastly, government. This is also policy support for what the greater initiative is, which is to expand blockchain. And so government, both regionally, provincially, at the state level and at the local level, really thinking about, okay, how do I streamline systems, taxes, birth certificates, death certificates, ownership rights, things like that. And we are starting to see this roll out across provinces and governments. But of course, the big thing that we think about when it comes to China is the digital currency race. And let's start with China. So DCEP, what is DCEP? It's the digital currency electronic payment, also known as, in the early days, CBDC. CBDC is a central bank-backed digital currency. In other words, it is the digital representation of the sovereign currency. And so these days, it's more popularly known as eRMB, the renminbi, or the e-yuan. Yuan, renminbi, same word for the Chinese currency. But it started 7 years ago. So Europe might be just starting to talk about it. The US is maybe thinking about it, and you're starting to hear other countries thinking, oh, should we get into it? China started to think about this 7 years ago. That's a 7-year lead on everyone else. A nation of 1.4 billion people, the world's second largest economy, in a globalized environment, thinking about the digital yuan. And it was an initiative led by the PBOC, and thinking, okay, how do we do this? And of course, you've heard stories of how you can't even spend physical cash in China. Everything is on your phone. You're doing that's my little family here. It's on your phone. You're paying by WeChat or your Alipay. And right now, we're also reporting that people are paying through their, digital hard wallets from the PBOC. We started reporting on trials in 2020. The digital RMB red packet experiment. This is the famous red packet. You give the lucky red envelope during Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year, and it's very, very popular. There is a digital version of it, and what the Chinese government did was give, as a trial run, digital RMB red packets that people could then spend at local retail stores. So this percolated from a 2014 idea to now what we're seeing is on the ground trials. Story that we reported on today, and it's on forecast.news. Go check it out. We're going to air it in about 3 hours. But a story that we reported on today is how, forget about in the main cities, digital RMB is being used in villages at farmers markets. Think about the integration of that. It's not the big cities, it's the mom and pops, the villagers, the farmers in rural China that are starting to use digital RMB. So you want to know about mainstream adoption? All you have to do is look at what's happening in China. Now, that's a story that we continuously keep our eyes on every day at Forecast. And some of the characteristics that we're seeing, obviously, that is very powerful is that it's programmable. So, what is a central bank if not trying to encourage you to either spend or save your money, depending on the interest rates, and then depending on the amount of dollars that is in circulation in the country, right? These are measures that, in the background, in legacy system, that is actually being operated by central banks right now in your respective country. Well, think of how much more effective potentially it could be if, I'm going to give you a tax stimulus check, but I don't want you to save it. The intent is, if I'm going to give you a stimulus check, I want you to spend it. So maybe you can't save it in your bank. Maybe the only thing that you can do with your digital stimulus check is to actually spend it at a store. Think about all of those things that central banks are actually trying to instigate to help out an economy by motivating the majority of spenders in their country's behavior. This could also be very interesting. Also, the application of monetary policy, as I was talking about, in consumer spending. For China, in its 14th five-year economic plan, which lasts until 2025. So every 5 years, there is there is a coming together from central planning, central government. But they are targeting domestic consumer spending and technology development, and very targeted towards blockchain. Another big trend that we're seeing emerging as well is blockchain services network coming out of China, and that is another example of just how deep China has thought about blockchain as it's integrated within its growth focus. And I want to talk about all of you, the next generation of investors, why we think things are super interesting here, and why at Forecast this is line of sight for us. Because if you think about it, we are seeing the largest transfer of intergenerational wealth right now in Asia, $5 trillion. So old legacy money being transferred to Gen X and millennials. And the significance of that should not be dismissed. Take a look at the top left. This is mind-blowing, because this is truly the potential of crypto. When 42% of your average portfolio sits in cash and alternative assets, that also means 42% of potential wealth transfer could be considered into crypto. That's a lot of liquidity, which explains a lot of the fraud that we are seeing right now. More money is being plowed into crypto and blockchain as we speak. And that kind of liquidity is going to prop up the industry, number one. But number two, really drive the speed of innovation, potentially. This chart also just shows that there is a lot of potential capital that can be used. And this is also a part of the world that thinks that blockchain innovation, especially from a policy point of view in China, is something that they want to focus on. And finally, this 42% of those asked in the 18 to 34 age group say they are likely to buy Bitcoin within the next 5 years. This was in 2019. These numbers, I am sure, have shot up, okay, including the 8% of those 65 and older, because we are also starting to hear that you guys were always on, crypto and Bitcoin. But now your dad and your mom and even your grandparents are saying, can you open up the Kraken account or a Coinbase account or whatever account for me? And how do I buy some Bitcoin here? We're hearing more and more of those stories really around the world. But this is, I just thought it was a fun thing to share, where, that intergenerational divide that we're really seeing reflected by this slide, where the younger generation, much more familiar, much more at ease and comfortable with digital innovation, digital wallets, and living in the metaverse, as it were. You are being joined by your older generation, and that is something that we are tracking from both the traditional investors and the institutional investors. Tesla was not the first to apply corporate treasury dollars into Bitcoin and ETH and crypto, and they won't be the last. We are starting to see more and more corporate dollars come into this space, because it's not just about a store of value, in my opinion. It truly is about being a foundation of what is transforming an old world into the new world. And that new world is using a technology that can provide avenues of trust without me having to know who you are before I send you my money. And to know that there can be a transfer of goods and services as a result of blockchain and smart contracts, that is just going to create a level of efficiency and trust that streamlines the avenues of economic growth in a more frictionless way. And I truly believe that it engages a lot more of us than just the top 1%. What excites me most about blockchain is the fact that it returns the economic power back to the individual. That for the first time in modern global economic history, that an individual can participate as powerfully as the ones who've had access all of this time. That is the promise of this new technology. And it behooves us all to learn about it. And it's our responsibility at Forecast, and truly one that is part of our DNA, that if you can understand this technology that is transforming your world, well, you can also participate it and transform the world into a better place for all of us. So thank you so much for listening, and happy to answer any of your questions.
Yeah, thank you for these insights about the recent trends in the different countries in Asia. I also hope that we all will participate more in the future. But as you said, first, we need to understand. And you, as a journalist, how do you keep up with the technologies yourself? How do you make yourself understand these complicated trends?
It is a hard task, and I'm very lucky to have an incredible team of journalists who also is their job to keep on top of the latest stories, the technology, and also us committing our resources and our platform to top blockchain thought leaders and founders, and understanding the story and the impact a little bit better. So it really is, 24/7. Things are happening so quickly. There's so much happening in this space that actually is so impactful to everyday lives that it's hard to imagine just how much change is happening as we speak. But thankfully, the team at Forecast do a fantastic job, and we continue to expand and grow every day to do the job better.
That's great. One of our participants is asking, so you pick out the recent trends and then you want to make a story out of it. But as you tell a story, you have to leave things out. You can only tell a little bit of it to make it understandable. So how can you tell a story responsibly?
Yeah, that's why we really committed to deeper dives. So there's various ways to cover a story, and for us, it's really important to tell people why it matters. And so one of our really flagship products is our the current forecast newsletter, and go on forecast.news, sign up for it, and every week in your inbox we collate the top stories. But what we do is we spend a lot of time telling you why it matters and putting it into context. And that really is our job. And you know what? As editors and as storytellers, it's also super important to know that you have a responsibility for your learning and education as well. And so, when you see it highlighted in maybe a 4-minute daily video from me, know too that that is a story that we are also covering in a deeper way, in a long form piece with supporting materials and supporting links and supporting content of a story that you might have went, oh, that's super interesting, I want to learn more. And so we do think about that very carefully in terms of why, we're not going to we're not going to just tell you the headlines. It was very important for us to be substantive. So those are some of the stories that we like to dive into. Certainly we can't cover everything, but from our editorial point of view, we pick the stories in our view that are the most impactful. And what we try to do is as well connect the dots for you. It's not just about one story. One story in a vacuum is never going to help you understand. For us, it really is about connecting the dots. And so, we are committed to doing that as best as we can. And I would also say that, seize the opportunity of living in a world where resources at your fingertips is as easy as clicking on a few letters on your keyboard. That responsibility also lies in our audience as well. This is a journey we take together. And so, we're not the only ones who are going to be supporting you in that journey. There are so many great resources that also can help you expand knowledge. But we certainly pride ourselves in being able to connect the dots from a global perspective, tell you stories that are happening in Asia that only we can, and then also to just help you understand the world a little bit better. So it's a co-journey for sure.
That's great. Let's jump again to the specific story of digital cash and Bitcoin, because we have a question from one of our participants. If there are any green or sustainable cryptocurrencies that could contribute to the environmental challenges, as Bitcoin alone cannot be the solution.
So I will say that this is a narrative that has seized the mainstream headlines, and it caused it, and I would say that the headlines don't reflect reality. And the reality is that with blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin, this is an industry that consumes electricity, and it consumes power usage, just like everything else. And so, though it's new, it is also creating ripple effects of impact in a way that other things might not, and not necessarily contributing to pollution or anything like that on the front end of it as well. So there's that. Okay. The other aspect of it is that there is a migration that we're also seeing to sustainable and renewable energy sources. That's certainly the case. And then the third thing that I think is so powerful, we are seeing a lot of projects emerge in the climate change space, where people are creating new tokens that can allow for carbon credits in a way that offsets energy usage. These products are being created right now. There are also funds that are being created to support some of the tokenization and the incentivization of how do you do smart contracts to support climate change initiatives and to support SDG goals. That work is being done right now that we have not been able to see without using blockchain technology. This has been sped up because of the smart contract capability of blockchain. So I would say that, let's really dive deep into what is being generated with blockchain and with cryptocurrency in the space. Are there challenges? Absolutely. But even the evolution of proof of work to proof so initially proof of work is now it's proof of stake, and now we're proof of time. And at each level of blockchain innovation, we are seeing the computational demands reduce because it's good for scalability and it's good for efficiency. So this space also recognizes that those large computational challenges that miners have to go through to stake claims and mine rewards also are scalable. So that's also happening in this space. It's not a static thing. Flag the issue, and there are a million bright minds that suddenly pounce on how to solve it.
So it is possible to invest in cryptocurrency with a clean environmental conscience. But would you also say that it is wise to invest now, or is it just another bubble or just an Asian trend at the moment?
So first and foremost, I'll just share with you the landscape. When I saw the emergence of an asset class a few years ago when I was at Bloomberg, and you know, when you talk about an asset, it's a marketplace. It's what other people addition to you. It is supply and demand. And so it's hard to fathom that, you know, more than 10 years ago now, in 2008, when the first Bitcoin was mined, that it was really made up in thin air, right? That's a digital, what is that? I don't get it. And yet what we have seen is the blockchain technology as a distributed ledger has created efficiencies and scalability and industry impact and enterprise efficiencies that actually have a lot of value. What we are seeing happening in this space right now is two things. One is a lot of stimulus happening around the world by central banks, including the United States. I'm just trying to add up all the $1 trillion stimulus packages, 1.9, and then it was 2.8, and then I think the latest one was 2.2. So there's trillions of dollars that are being printed against the US economy. So there's one. You see the frothiness of the equity markets. You see COVID-19 hit economies. And yet, you know, while people in their real lives feel real pain, it's not necessarily being reflected in our financial markets. There is a serious disconnect here. And so then in the parallel, we have Bitcoin, where 21 million will ever be mined. It is a finite number, and increasingly we've seen this as being a store of value. And certainly now, it's not just, you know, the cypherpunks who are mining Bitcoin and, you know, buying pizza and beer with Bitcoin. It's the corporate treasury of Tesla or Meitu here in Asia, or a big corporate name in Korea and Japan. We are starting to see traditional banks, traditional hedge funds, traditional asset managers putting money into this space. So you can imagine that when you have that kind of exponential demand and the kind of liquidity that is happening in this space, if you want to participate, that's the money that you're participating with. There is a marketplace for this interest. And we are only seeing it go this way. And it's supported by the technology innovations as well that we're seeing transform decentralized finance and also starting to transform centralized finance. So is it time to invest now? I would say that if you haven't thought about it, you should start brushing up on your economy 101. You should start reflecting on how much the world has not changed since 2008. And then you should start thinking about why more people who are engaged in cryptocurrency might be an interesting thing for the overall market. So that's what I would say. I'm just giving you information, you figure it out.
Yeah. One of our participants still has concerns. He asks if the cryptocurrencies would not limit the power of the small people, because they just put power from the banks to wealthy people who invest. So how can we make sure that it empowers us as norm and empowers also small people?
That's a great question. And why cryptocurrency is actually super powerful, and why it is actually designed to disintermediate legacy and centralized finance, is because of its decentralized nature. There is not one centralized function that can shut it down. It is decentralized, meaning many people and access to the one. Now, obviously, if you're a so-called whale and you're making huge bets in cryptocurrency, that is something that is happening in every market. But the fact is that to the 8th decimal point, when people in India, right, are seeing in a decentralized way how they can participate in this space with peers, versus their centralized government and going to a bank and trying to get 1% interest, because most of the world is negative yield. And cryptocurrency is behaving in a different way, with access for many versus one. That's actually what makes it very interesting. But I do have to say, this is still a very new arena. This is why the regulators are watching with very close eyes. Their job is to make sure that you don't get hurt. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that's happening in this space where you got to scratch your head and go, how does this make money, or how does this make sense? In those instances, I would say follow your gut and be conscious and be wary. If this is not something that you feel comfortable with, that you should not. And this is why having institutional dollars come into this space is actually really interesting, because there is a fiduciary responsibility. They have regulatory requirements that demand legal specificity to their dollars. And so if there is a framework in which they can participate, they'll demand it. That also protects the rest of us. I am probably of maybe a small, probably in the minority of people who believe that regulations in this space can actually help grow the industry. And certainly we have seen instances in which that has happened. This space is not policed in the way that a lot of regulatory financial instruments are, but that's not to say that it's evil, or it's dangerous, or it's X, or it's X. We cannot brush with a broad stroke that against the promise of this technology. And so be wary that there are certain characteristics of that. There are dubious scams out there pretending to be X. Be dubious of that. But then again, this happens in the real world as well. Anytime there is interest, this is why it's super, super, super important. Do your homework. check, double check, and check again. I mean, that's what we do it as journalists. That's what you should do with your money.
Yeah. Now coming back to empowering people, we are moving in our last minutes now, and I would love you to share some thoughts how we could empower ourselves. So for the people who want to become active storytellers themselves from our audience, how can they best start to stand up, speak up, and also get heard?
Start. I am a believer in use your voice and use it often. It is a muscle. If you do not use it, it will atrophy. And so it is your responsibility to speak truth, to share knowledge, and to empower others. I think we are all storytellers at the end of the day. Each one of us have incredible stories to tell. You are unique in and of yourself. There is no one like you with the accumulation of experiences and interests and knowledge that you have, all wrapped up in one human experience, which is you. And so your responsibility is also, if you feel if you feel this, then you'll know you also have a responsibility to share it. So you don't necessarily have to be a journalist to be a storyteller. That you can be just like Simon, who is telling the stories and helping share a platform so others can tell stories, and that we can all share our knowledge together. To sharing your knowledge with your family and with your peers. This is the responsibility I think we all have, and I'll leave you with this. I think the most powerful voices in the room are often the most authentic and vulnerable ones. And when you have the courage to strip off the facade that sometimes we put on, the mask that we put on, so that others will like us more, or that, people will think that we are X or whatever, to be brave enough to strip that away and speak your authentic truth. That's really when story lands and is the most impactful. So that's something that I learned. Maybe a little too late, but I eventually got there, and here I am.
These are very powerful insights, I think. So thank you very much for being here. I just started a little poll for the participants. I kindly ask you to fill it out with just a couple of clicks. Meanwhile, I want to thank you again, Angie, for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining.
And if you like the talk, you can keep up with the work of Angie on her website, and also check out her company, forecast.news. And if you want to stay tuned for further inspiring events with Asian European society and gain more authentic insights about Asia, you can get involved in interesting projects on our website, aesmuc.de. You will find the link in the chat. So take care of yourselves, stay motivated, and start telling more stories.